Big Sky, Montana, has always been a place where expansive valleys and majestic mountains created a scene worthy of an artist's brush. Every year, people from all corners of the state flocked here to attend the famous fair, where the main event was the horse shows. Locals and visitors alike reveled in the atmosphere, where the scent of fresh grass mingled with the aroma of homemade baking and lively voices blended with the neighing of horses. Among the many animals adorning this event, one horse in particular drew special attention, a horse named Thunder. The enormous white stallion, whose gleaming coat resembled freshly fallen snow, was known for his unruly temperament. Anyone who tried to tame him encountered unpredictability bordering on wild fury. Thunder had become something of a legend, and rumors of his untamability drew crowds eager to see him in action. A crowd gathered around the arena, tensely watching several trainers attempt to handle the stallion. However, they all failed. Thunder, furiously stamping his hooves and dropping the reins, refused to obey. His wild gaze challenged anyone who tried to approach. Among the spectators was Lucy Carlyle, a girl whose life had changed 3 years ago. A car accident had robbed her of the ability to walk, but it had not taken her spirit. The fair-haired girl, sitting in a wheelchair next to her mother, Marion Carlyle, watched the scene with shining eyes. Despite no longer being able to ride, Lucy's love for horses remained as bright as the sun's rays filtering through the leaves of the trees. "He's incredible," Lucy whispered, looking at Thunder, who seemed to embody strength and freedom. Her voice sounded as if she were talking to herself, but Marion heard and gently placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Lucy, dear," she began, "that stallion, he's dangerous. Even experienced trainers can't handle him." But Lucy wasn't listening. Her blue eyes were fixed on Thunder, and in them, there was more than just admiration. It was a deep understanding. She saw in him not just wildness, but a loneliness that reflected her own feelings. This connection, invisible and inexplicable, happened instantly, like a flash of lightning in a dark sky. In the arena, the announcer, a tall man in a cowboy hat, drew the crowd's attention. His voice, amplified by the microphone, spread over the fairgrounds. "Ladies and gentlemen, before you stands one of the most unique horses in our state, Thunder. Today, we are looking for a brave soul who can win his trust. Are there any volunteers?" The crowd fell silent. People exchanged glances, but no one dared to raise their hand. Even the most experienced riders understood the risk. Thunder, at that moment, stamped his hoof as if emphasizing his determination not to obey anyone. And suddenly, the silence was broken by a thin but confident voice. "I want to try." All heads turned towards Lucy. Marion gasped, trying to stop her daughter, but the girl had already raised her hand, her face serious and focused. "It's impossible," Marion whispered, her heart stopping. "Lucy, think it's too dangerous." But the announcer, noticing the brave girl, smiled and stepped forward. "We have a volunteer. Young lady, come to the arena." The crowd began to whisper. Some looked with admiration, others with clear disapproval. Lucy, despite her excitement, moved her wheelchair forward. The announcer helped her down onto the sandy arena. Thunder, noticing her approach, raised his head. His nostrils flared, and his hooves nervously shifted the ground. "Hey, boy," Lucy whispered, extending her hand. Her voice was soft but confident. "I won't hurt you." Thunder froze. The crowd held their breath. Everyone, from trainers to simple spectators, couldn't believe their eyes. The stallion, who moments ago was ready to bolt, now stood motionless, staring at the girl. His enormous eyes, full of wild fire, softened. And then, as if obeying an invisible force, Thunder took a step forward. Lucy carefully touched his neck. At that moment, time seemed to stop. A bond formed between the human and the animal that no one could explain. The crowd, which had been holding its breath, exploded with applause. People couldn't believe that a little girl in a wheelchair had done what even the best trainers couldn't. And Marion, standing at the edge of the arena, covered her face with her hands, hiding tears, a mix of fear, pride, and relief. This moment marked the beginning of an extraordinary story that would change Lucy and Thunder's lives forever. The morning sun gently lit the Big Sky Valley. The air was cool and fresh, filled with the scent of pine trees and wild grass. After yesterday's performance, the atmosphere at the fair was filled with animated discussions. But the main topic of conversation was Thunder and Lucy. It was clear that every county now knew the name of the girl in the wheelchair who had found a way to the heart of the wild stallion. In one corner of the fair, in a wooden stable, stood Lucy along with her mother and trainer Jackson Hayward. Jackson, a sturdy man with sharp features and a keen eye for detail, looked at the girl with newfound respect. He had seen her tame Thunder the day before, but now his interest had turned to suspicion. "Do you really want to continue?" he asked, crossing his arms. His voice was stern, but there was a note of concern in it. "This stallion is dangerous. You had a lucky moment, but that doesn't mean he'll always be so compliant." Lucy looked up at him. There was no fear or change in her eyes, only a determination rarely seen in a child her age. "I have to try," she calmly replied. "He's not what he seems. He just needs someone to be honest with him." Marion, standing nearby, nervously fidgeted with the edge of her jacket. Her heart was torn between the desire to protect her daughter and pride in her determination. "Jackson, maybe we could just try? If it gets too dangerous, we'll stop right away," Marion said softly, trying to hide the worry in her voice. Jackson slowly shook his head, looking at Thunder standing nearby. The horse was calm, but his eyes still reflected the wild spirit that couldn't be underestimated. "All right," he finally said, sighing, "but I have conditions. First, I'll be by your side every second. Second, if something goes wrong, we leave. Understood?" Lucy's face lit up with determination. This was her chance, not just to find her connection with Thunder, but to find in him the friend she had been searching for. When Lucy entered the stable, Thunder was already waiting for her. The stallion seemed to recognize the girl. He slowly turned his head, his ears perked up, and his eyes intently followed her every movement. Lucy smiled. "Hi, boy," she gently said, approaching. "Remember me?" Thunder softly snorted, and Lucy took it as a sign of recognition. She slowly extended her hand, allowing him to sense her scent. The horse didn't back away, but didn't take a step forward either. "You know you're not to blame for what happened to you," Lucy said softly, her voice trembling. "I know what it's like to feel broken, as if the world has turned its back on you. But this isn't the end. We'll find a way. Together." Jackson muttered, standing next to Marion and watching the process intently. "She knows what she's doing. She's not rushing." "That's right. The horse feels that it's not being threatened." Marion just turned, not taking her eyes off her daughter. She saw how Lucy talked to Thunder, how she stroked his soft neck, and how the horse seemed to relax under her touch. "You're not at fault for what happened to you," Lucy said softly, her voice trembling. "I know what it's like to feel broken, as if the world has turned its back on you. But this isn't the end. We'll find a way. Together." Jackson raised his eyebrows. He heard the girl talking to the horse, but there was something in her words that touched him as well. Perhaps he had underestimated her. Over the next hour, Lucy and Thunder slowly established contact. Jackson watched their every step, ready to intervene at any moment. But no intervention was needed. Thunder, who usually avoided people, seemed to begin trusting the girl. Her patience and gentleness accomplished what dozens of experienced trainers could not. "This is incredible," Jackson whispered when Thunder allowed Lucy to take his reins. "I've never seen anything like it." Marion, hearing his words, felt a softening of her sentence. Her heart was still full of sound, but now hope had taken residence in it. When the training session ended, Jackson approached Lucy. Respect shone in his eyes. "Good job," he said, smiling slightly. "You have a gift, Lucy. But remember, this stallion can still be dangerous. We'll move slowly, step by step. Agreed?" "Yes," Lucy replied, her voice firm. "Thank you for giving me a chance." Jackson changed. He still didn't fully believe what he was seeing, but he couldn't deny the obvious. There was a special bond between Lucy and Thunder, and he was willing to give her the opportunity to find it. And in the corner of the stable, watching the scene, Thunder quietly lowered his head, as if confirming his agreement. The day in Big Sky arrived with thick morning fog that slowly dissipated, giving way to a clear blue sky. Lucy and Marion headed to the stables again. Yesterday's successes had inspired the girl, but they also brought more questions. Why had Thunder, wild and untamed, so drastically changed his behavior around her? What had he experienced to become this way? As they approached, Jackson was already leaning against the wooden fence, his usual serious gaze sliding over Lucy before settling on Thunder, who was nervously pacing in his enclosure. "We have a slightly different task today," Jackson began, crossing his arms. "Lucy, you did well yesterday, but if you want to continue, you need to know the truth about this horse." Lucy frowned. She felt that behind Thunder's fury lay something more, but she hadn't expected Jackson to bring it up himself. "What happened to him?" she asked, moving her wheelchair closer. Jackson looked intently at Thunder, as if gathering his thoughts. "Thunder was part of a big training operation," he began. "He was being prepared for jumping, but the methods were, let's say, not the most humane. He was used until he was no longer profitable. And when he stopped making money, he was sold at an auction like a broken toy. We bought him to give him a chance, but so far, no one has been able to win his trust." Lucy looked at Thunder, who stood by the fence, his head turned away, as if trying to shield himself from the conversation. His eyes seemed to hold deep pain. "That's why he's so afraid of people," she whispered. "He was hurt." Jackson changed. His voice softened, as if he were trying to explain something important not only to Lucy, but also to himself. "Yes, people saw him only as a tool, but maybe you're showing him that it's not so." Lucy was silent. Thoughts whirled in her head. She knew what it was like to feel unwanted. After the accident, many treated her with pity, but not with respect. And now she saw herself in Thunder, equally broken and rejected, yet still yearning for trust. "I'll help him," she said firmly, her voice sounding unexpectedly loud to her mother. "This is more than that." Marion, standing nearby, lowered her gaze. She saw her daughter's words reflecting her own thoughts, but she couldn't help but worry. "Lucy," she began, choosing her words carefully, "this is dangerous. Thunder can hurt you." "He won't, Mom," Lucy interrupted, not taking her eyes off the stallion. "I'm sure." Soon, Jackson opened the enclosure, allowing Thunder to come out. The horse slowly approached Lucy, stopping at a safe distance. The girl extended her hand. "Hi, boy," she said softly. "I know it's been tough, but you're not alone." Thunder froze, his ears twitching attentively. Lucy didn't rush, giving him time. Several minutes passed before he took a cautious step forward. Her fingers gently touched his neck. "See? I'm not here to hurt you," she whispered. The scene was almost magical. Jackson stood to the side, watching this unusual bond. Marion, trying not to make a sound, pressed her hands tightly to her chest, as if praying for everything to go well. "Lucy, let's try something new," Jackson said, stepping closer. "Try taking his reins and taking a few steps. Just slowly." The girl changed. She carefully took the leather reins, feeling Thunder tense. But her voice remained soft and soothing. "It's okay, boy, we'll just do this together," she said, gently tugging on the reins. The stallion took one step, then another. His movement was cautious, as if testing whether he could trust the girl. Lucy smiled. "You're doing great," she praised. "You're a good boy." Thunder seemingly relaxed his neck and took a few more steps. It was clear that at that moment, he truly began to believe that he could feel safe with this person. After the training session, Jackson approached Lucy. Respect shone in his eyes. "You're an amazing girl," he said. "I don't know how you do it, but you give him something he's never known, hope." Lucy smiled. Her hands still held the reins, and her eyes sparkled with joy. "It's not just me," she replied. "He wants to believe. He just needs a little help." Thunder softly snorted in agreement. And at that moment, it became clear that for both of them, a new stage was beginning, a stage of trust and healing, where each of them could find what they had long lost. At noon, the fairgrounds came alive again. Voices echoed everywhere, hurriedly taking their places by the fence. Today was the day of the most anticipated event and significant phenomena. The best riders and their horses demonstrated their skills, evoking the admiration of the public. But at the center of it all was the attention of an unusual pair, a girl in a wheelchair and her wild stallion. Lucy stood off to the side of the arena with Jackson and Marion. Thunder, already harnessed, nervously shifted from foot to foot. His movements conveyed a mix of tension and anticipation. Lucy placed her hand on his neck, as she did every morning during training. "Are you ready, boy?" she asked softly, her voice soothing. Jackson stepped forward, checking the harness and reins. His gaze was serious, but behind it lay a shadow of pride. "Listen to me, Lucy," he began, leaning against the wooden fence. "Remember that today a lot depends on your confidence. If you're nervous, he'll sense it. You need to show him that everything is under control." Lucy changed. She knew that this day would be a test, not only for Thunder, but also for herself. All her efforts, all the hours spent with the horse, came down to this moment. "We'll manage," she replied, looking at Thunder. "Won't we, boy?" The horse snorted, and Lucy smiled, taking it as his agreement. When the announcer called their entrance, the crowd fell silent. People exchanged glances, not believing that the girl in the wheelchair was actually going to enter the arena with Thunder, the very stallion no one could tame. Jackson opened the gate, and Lucy, gripping the reins, led Thunder onto the sandy arena. The spectators froze, watching her every movement. Thunder walked slowly, his head held high, muscles tensed. But next to him was Lucy. Her calmness was transmitted to him, as if an invisible thread connected them. "Let's start, boy," she whispered, gently tugging on the reins. Lucy guided Thunder in a circle, watching his grace and strength. The horse moved smoothly, obeying her commands. The crowd began to whisper. No one could have imagined that the stallion, known for his wild temper, would behave so calmly. But unexpectedly, a loud bang echoed from the stands. Someone had accidentally dropped a heavy metal bench. The sound reverberated across the arena, causing Thunder to stop and raise his head. His nostrils flared, and his eyes filled with alarm. "Thunder, easy," Lucy called, her voice firm but gentle. The horse froze, but the tension in his body did not disappear. Lucy, without losing her composure, gently tugged on the reins and began to speak softly. "It's just a noise, boy. I'm here. It's okay." Seconds stretched endlessly, but gradually, Thunder began to relax. His breathing became steadier, and his feet confidently stepped onto the sand. Lucy released the reins, allowing him to take a few independent steps. The crowd followed with relief, and the first applause began in the stands. But for Lucy, this was only the first step. She knew they needed to show something more. The next test culminated in a jump over a barrier. This was a major trick even for experienced riders, but Lucy believed in Thunder. She stopped him in front of it, gently stroked his neck, and said, "You can do it. We're together." She gave the command, gently tugging on the reins. Thunder snorted, took a running start, and effortlessly cleared the barrier. His jump was so graceful that the spectators burst into loud applause. Lucy smiled, feeling pride swell in her heart. But the climax of the performance was yet to come. Lucy had to show that her bond with Thunder was based on trust. She stopped him in the center of the arena, released the reins, and raised her hand. "Thunder, kneel," she said gently. The stallion froze, then slowly lowered himself onto his front knees, bowing his head before the girl. The crowd stood up, bursting into ovations. Lucy smiled, feeling Thunder's complete trust in her. That day, they proved to everyone that even the most broken can find their way if there is someone who believes in them. The bright sun was setting, casting a soft, dark light over the Big Sky Valley. Lucy and Thunder's final performance had become not just the main event of the fair, but a moment that changed many lives. The crowd had not yet dispersed, despite the fading light. People gathered, discussing what they had seen, their voices filled with excitement and awe. Lucy sat next to Thunder at the edge of the stable. Her hand gently stroked the stallion's neck, who seemed to enjoy this quiet moment. The girl's eyes shone with happiness, but inside, she felt that this was only the beginning of their story. Jackson and Marion approached them. The trainer looked satisfied, although his gaze was, as always, complex. "Lucy, you've surpassed all my expectations," he said, sitting down next to her. "Your performance today didn't just impress. It changed their perception. They see that trust and perseverance can work miracles." Marion, who had been watching from the edge of the arena, finally relaxed. She knelt next to her daughter and hugged her. "You were incredible, dear," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Lucy smiled, but her gaze remained fixed on Thunder. "It's not just my achievement," she said softly. "He trusted me. Without that, nothing would have been possible." As the evening drew to a close, a woman Lucy had never seen before approached them. Her face was serious, but her eyes held kindness. She introduced herself as Mrs. Harper, the fair organizer. "Lucy, I wanted to talk to you," she said, looking at the girl and then turning her gaze to Thunder. "What I saw today was more than just a performance. It was something truly special." Lucy blushed slightly, but remained steadfast. "Thank you," she replied. Mrs. Harper continued, "I want to offer you the opportunity to participate in our program for working with horses that have had difficulties. We help horses like Thunder find new homes and people who can give them a second chance. You and he have shown that even the most complex problems can be overcome if there is trust." Lucy looked at Jackson, then at Marion. Her heart filled with warmth. She knew this was not just a chance to help another, but also an opportunity to do something new for Thunder. "I agree," she said firmly. "If it helps horses like him, I'm ready." The following weeks flew by in an instant. Lucy and Thunder became part of a program dedicated to helping horses that had experienced abuse. Marion and Jackson supported her at every step. They also began teaching children with disabilities, who, like Lucy, found solace and strength in their interactions with horses. One day, a group of children arrived. Among them was a boy named Ben, who was only 6 years old. He was quiet and shy, but his eyes lit up when he first saw Thunder. Lucy helped him approach the stallion, telling him how she had found a friend in the horse. "You can trust him," she said, holding the boy's hand. "He knows when you're honest with him. Just be yourself." Ben cautiously extended his hand to Thunder, and the horse, as if understanding his uncertainty, gently touched his palm. The boy laughed, and Lucy felt her heart fill with warmth. Several months passed. The program they were implementing began to attract the attention not only of locals, but also of journalists. Lucy and Thunder's story became a symbol of trust overcoming any obstacle. People came from all corners of the country to see the extraordinary pair and learn their story. That evening, as the sun set, Lucy and Thunder stood at the edge of the field. She held his reins and watched as the shadows of the trees stretched along the grass. "We've come a long way, boy," she said, stroking his mane. "But I know this is only the beginning." Thunder softly snorted, as if agreeing with her. They both knew that their bond had become something more than just friendship. It was a legacy of trust that they had left to the world. As night fell on Big Sky, Lucy and Thunder, illuminated by the stars, stood together. Their story had become a legend, but for them, it was not about fame. It was about how two broken souls found in each other the strength to become whole.